I remember one time I came to the church, and a good friend of mine told me, this brother will preach the everlasting gospel. And I was excited, you know. I was kind of brand new in the church, and I heard he will preach the everlasting gospel. And in fact, he preached the everlasting gospel. He took 2 hours for his sermon. And I was like, oh, now I understand what he's talking about. You know, eternal, forever, talking. And he was very in repetition of the things that he already said. And when the people in charge of this beautiful program told me, your topic is the everlasting gospel, I go like, oh, okay. How long they gonna give me? So, but in fact, the topic for today is a very, very, very important topic. Not because I'm presenting it, it's because it's the gospel indeed, the commission that have been given to us and has been presented forever. And now we will understand what is the everlasting gospel, and at the same time we will try to connect it with the three angels' message that we have to present today and how that connects with the gospel. So remember that the gospel is something special for salvation, but also is a warning there. God is showing mercy. God is showing love, how we can be saved. Now, the verse was read in Romans 1:16 that says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. For it is the power of God unto salvation." That's it. That's the definition of gospel. The power of God unto salvation. God wants to save everybody. He wants to save the whole world. We will see it. But not everybody wants to be saved, as God says. And so we will go through here, and in order to understand what is the gospel, the everlasting gospel, we have to go back some verses. And John wrote many books. John wrote like 5 books, I think, and one of them is Revelation, and that's the only time that he makes reference to the word gospel and with the word everlasting. Why is he presenting this like that? Why is the gospel everlasting gospel? And in order to understand this, the beginning of the three angels' message has this part. It says, "And I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to do what? To preach it, to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice," and then we know the rest. But we will not talk now about that. We need to understand this. What is the gospel? And we already say is the power of God unto salvation for those who believe it. Now, the everlasting gospel, as we see there, has its origins way back in eternity. We need to go back to Genesis. And we find Jesus, we find God. He created Adam and Eve. He created them innocent. He created them holy, and he created them righteous. That's the way God created Adam and Eve. So, to show their righteousness, God covered them with a garment of light. And that garment of light has a significance. It has a meaning for us today in regards to salvation, in regards to holiness, in regard to righteousness. And it's a very special thing that we need to understand, because some people don't believe that. And in order to see that God created Adam and Eve to his image, we have to read Psalms 104, 1 and 2. And it says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, O Lord my God, that are very great." But listen to this. "Thou art clothed with honor and majesty, who covers thyself with light us with garment. That's the dress. That's how God is covered. In this way, with majesty and honor, with the light as garment. And that was the same light that Adam and Eve had. And he says, who stretched out the heavens like a curtain. So the same clothing that he had, Adam and Eve had before they committed sin. And we need to see this, that these dress, these garments represent that Adam and Eve were obedient to God. They were obedient to the law of God, and it showed that they had righteousness on themselves because God clothed them like that. The righteousness of God was given to them. And I'm making emphasis on this because this is what the everlasting gospel gets into when they lost this garment. So, now, in Genesis 3:7, we see a problem. It says, and the eyes of them both were open, and they knew that they were naked. But the Bible says that God created them naked. But only now, when they commit sin, now their eyes are open and they recognize, they acknowledge that they are naked. What does this mean? It means that they lost the garment that God had given them. The Spirit of Prophecy speaks about this, and it says, declares like following. It says, the covering of light about them soon disappeared. And under a sense of guilt and loss of their divine covering, a shivering seized them, and they tried to cover their exposed forms. The Lord will not have them investigated the fruit of the tree of knowledge, or for then they will be exposed to Satan masked. He knew that they will be perfectly safe if they touch not the fruit. So, the naked bodies now exposed, it represents nothing but disobedience to the law of God. Simple like that. They became unrighteous. Their nakedness led them to the sentence of death. They had to die. Simple as that. That is the significance of this part of history and redemption. Now they were sentenced to death. Look at Romans 6:23. For the wages of sin is death. We're going to stop there. So the sentence of death is the result of their nakedness or unclothing. Being without the righteousness of Christ, they were condemned. But now, listen to this. The death that God was talking here, it was not only physical death. God was talking about eternal separation from Him. He was talking also about a spiritual death, and He was talking about eternal death with no hope to exist again. This is the tragedy. That was the saddest moment on the whole entire universe. The peace that was reigning on earth up to that moment was broken in 1,000 pieces. Because you can see the results today on this planet. You see death, you see drugs, you see all kinds of abuses against humans. That was the consequence. So, what else do we find here? Look in Genesis 2:17. This is the warning. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. In other words, Adam and Eve had to die in that very day. They had to be killed. They had to be terminated because they broke the covenant. They did not follow God's instructions. Do you follow? So they had to die at that moment. Now the question is why they did not suffer death and all its implications. That's the question that will connect us with Revelation 14:6 on. And so they had to die, and what happened? Look at the book of Peter, 1 Peter 1:18 through 20. They didn't die because of this. For as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things, as silver and gold, for your vain conversation received by the tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, as a lamb without blemish. We will use this later. And without spot. And look what it says here. Who verily was foreordained before the foundation of the world. That's why they didn't die. Because the plan of salvation, the plan of redemption was fabricated, was elaborated, was instituted before even the foundation of the world. Before even Adam and Eve exist. So for the everlasting gospel does not exist from Jesus dying on the cross on. It exists before that. So we find references that God was not taken by surprise. Sin did not take God by surprise. This was not a plan that, humans committed sin, let's see what we can do. No, this was already provided. This plan was already provided, and God had a contingency plan. It's not a last-minute plan. Imagine this building, only one door, and now fire comes, and then you start, let's break the wall so everybody can go out. You leave that door there before. Even the authorities will not allow you to build something like this if you don't have emergency exits. It's logical. God works like that. So that's the reason why they did not die that moment. So God did something. In Genesis 3, 7, and 10, we find the following. Okay? It says that their eyes were open and they knew they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made for themselves aprons. But wait a minute. God comes and talks to them. And what was the answer of Adam? He says, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid, and I did what? I hid. But wait, they used something to cover themselves. But they knew that light, that protection, that divinity disappeared. But even then, they covered. They felt naked. They felt unprotected. That is the sense of guilt. Something that tells you in your conscience who you are, where you are, and what are you doing. When that little voice, when that little sense of guilt disappears from you, brother, you need to find out what's going on with you. When you do things and you say, it's not bad, once a year is not, then you have to find out, because then you will not be even in the position of these individuals. And then he says in verse 10, and he said, and heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. Then the next verse says the following. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. He shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Now, here, God is introducing what? The plan of redemption. The plan that was ordained now is announced to Adam and Eve. They didn't know about this because they didn't sin before. Now they are learning about this, and now God is telling something. God is telling them something that will bring them hope. That's why they didn't die. Jesus will crush the head of Satan. So what event will crush the head of the serpent? Can you tell me? What event? Can somebody say?
Death of Christ on Calvary.
That was the beginning. If you read in Romans 16:20, I don't have it in the screen, but it says clearly, and the God of peace shall bruise Satan under your feet shortly. This is Romans 16:20. So Satan is a defeated foe, but his annihilation, his destruction will come until the end of the 1,000 years. That's why he knows his time is short, and that's why he's trying to bother us. Now, how did God cover their nakedness? We know this. It says in Genesis 3:21, unto Adam also and his wife did the Lord God make coats of skin and clothed them. Coats of skin. Where did this come from? From an animal. We know that. Somebody had to die. That day that Adam and Eve committed sin, death was introduced in this planet. But the animal died. A lamb, a perfect lamb, died. And God made what? Made them coats of the skin. That's why it's called the everlasting gospel. And this lamb represented Jesus, according to Revelation 13:8 says, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Right? There you have it. It was Jesus who was represented by that slain, but Jesus offered himself prior to that in eternity. I don't know when, but he did. The Lamb represented Jesus. So, for us, as we say, the hope is a fulfillment. We have to look in the back, to the back of the history. But for them, from Adam, and going on to the people of Israel, they have to look forward to a promise. And so we see here that the gospel was foreshadowed to the Israelites. The gospel was foreshadowed to everyone. For them, they had to see Jesus in that lamb. For the priest, he had to see Jesus in that lamb. For the people, everybody had to look to the sanctuary. It was shadows, forms. So Jesus was presented to them. The gospel was presented to them. That's why it says, Paul said, the gospel was presented to them before us. But they did not mingle it with faith. So the gospel didn't work in a real process in them. Of course, there were many that were saved. Otherwise, imagine Mary. If Mary wouldn't be a person, a righteous person, Jesus will never be born from Mary. So the law had something to do with it. Joseph, think about Joseph. So, what they were lost, many of them, it may be because they believe not with real faith. They were just doing it because a rite, because a routine. But many were saved because they saw Jesus in that. So God provided a way for them. Ceremonial laws, sacrificial laws. So Adam's descendants will have a way to go to salvation. Okay? So God had a perfect lamb. God also had something. See, we will not talk about ceremonial laws here because, or anything of that, because it will take us forever, and then it will be the everlasting gospel. But two things that I want to mention to you is that in all these rites and all these things, there have to be two elements that we cannot ignore. Is the perfect priest and the perfect victim. And something that you will find here is that it's not talking about moral perfection. They have to be at peace with God. Imagine a high priest, before going into to offer for the people, he has to offer himself a sacrifice to atone himself, to redeem himself. But physically, he had to be perfect. And look, Leviticus 21, 17 and 21. I just want to read this so you understand that this is physical. It says, "Speak unto Aaron, saying, Whosoever he be of thy seed in their generation that had any blemish, let him not approach to offer the bread of his God." And when he says this blemish, who will go there? Who will go if all of us are sinners? Nobody will go there. Nobody. God will not have true worshipers. Anybody that will give him a sacrifice. So this is talking more about physical. And look what it says. It says here, "For whatsoever man he be that had a blemish, he shall not approach. A blind man, or lame, or he that had a flat nose, or anything superfluous, or a man that is broken-footed, or broken-handed, or crook-backed, or a dwarf, or that had a blemish in his eyes, or be scurvy, or scathed, or had his stones broken. No man that had a blemish of the seed of Aaron, the priest shall come nigh to offer the offering of the Lord made by fire." And then he says, "He had a blemish. He shall not come nigh to offer the bread of his God." So you say, why are you reading this? Because this was more physical than moral. Because this represented the life of Jesus. This represented the unblemished life of our high priest, our intercessor, our Messiah. This was a symbol of it. Now, what about the perfect victim? Look what it says here in Leviticus 22:20. Because Jesus was the priest and Jesus was also the perfect lamb. And he says, "But whosoever had a blemish, whatsoever had a blemish, that shall ye not offer, for he shall not be acceptable for you. And whosoever offered a sacrifice of peace offering unto the Lord to accomplish his vow, or a freewill offering in hives or sheep, it shall be perfect to be accepted there, shall be no blemish therein. Blind or broken or maimed or having a wound, a scurvy or scab, ye shall not offer these unto the Lord, nor make an offering by fire of them upon the altar unto the Lord." Why? Because they had a blemish. So God, our Lord Jesus Christ, was perfect as a man, living a perfect life, setting for us an example. That is just an example for us. And being a victim, he offered the perfect sacrifice. That is the conclusion of this part of not blemish on the priest, neither the victim. Now, Hebrews 10:4 says the following, "For it is not possible that the blood of bulls or goats shall take away the sin." Nothing of that law will take the sins of men if they don't see Jesus. If they have no connection with the future Messiah, then nothing of those sacrifices will help them. It will be just a rite. It will be just a form. The same for us today. If you are here just because you want to see your friends, just because you want to have a good time, you want to get away from the things that you do, but you don't come here to find Jesus, to see Jesus, you're wasting your time. But if you come here with the purpose of, in one of these sermons, in one of these presentations, I will grasp something that will turn my life around. I want to hear it. I want to see it. I want to feel it. That will make a whole difference. Just to bring it to a practical example. Now, so both groups were saved by the same Jesus. As I said before, in the past, for them was a promise. For us, a fulfillment. For them, they had to see Jesus through faith in all the sacrifices. For us, it already happened. For them, the coming Messiah. For us, the Messiah that will come. So we need to reconcile all these things, and as we see in Hebrews 4:15, that's why it says as follows: For we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted, like as we are, yet without sin. That's why Paul says that. Do you understand? That's why Paul says that, and we need to see that God is working with us and in us. Now, I want to read another Bible text here that is talking about how Jesus has saved us. Okay? He was the perfect lamb. I want to read 1 John chapter 2, verse 2, and it says, and he is the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for the sins of the whole world. We are not the only ones that are invited to accept this. We have the privilege to already accept it and are here and are connected, and in somehow we are in relation with this. But the gospel is not for only a group. You know where I'm going now. The first angel says that the everlasting gospel has to be presented to the whole world. Now, what are we doing as a church? As individuals, what are we doing? Are we preaching? Are we going forward with this? Look what it says in John 3:16. I believe that not all, maybe all, but I think you have heard this. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Now, everlasting life with an everlasting gospel. Which one is different? They are connected. That's why it says everlasting life. It will bring us to eternity. And finally, but look what we did. According to Isaiah 53, you know, this is a very famous chapter in the Bible. All we like sheep have gone astray. So there is nobody here. Not me, not you, no minister, nobody that can say that we have a perfect experience. All of us have bumps and lumps. All of us. And that's not to accuse. It's just to encourage us that we are in the same line for salvation. Right here. For salvation, you are here. Okay? Nobody's ahead of anybody. It's just a matter of decisions. We are here. Now, some of us have different responsibilities. Yes. It will be demanded more. But the salvation is the same treatment. You accept it, you're saved. You don't accept it, then you are in trouble. Simple like that. And with that acceptance, there are other things that come because we are talking about the gospel of the fulfillment, the gospel of the promises. But there is the gospel of fruits. But we're going to talk about that in another study. Today, we just need to understand this. And what happened when Jesus died? What happened when Jesus died? Do you remember what happened? He resurrected. He became alive. And then he talked to the disciples, and he went to heaven to continue the intercession, to continue the ministry of salvation. And he gave a command to the disciples, and he says that go and ye will be my witness. Where? In Miami, in Hialeah, in Georgia, in Atlanta, Carrollton, everywhere. You will be my witness. That is a calling. And look what it says here. Jesus knew all the things that are happening, and he says, neither pray I for these alone, but for them also which shall believe on me through their word. He was praying for you. He was praying for me. And now we need to fulfill that prayer. How? Living the life that Jesus has given us. Making this commitment a lifestyle, and preaching to others, and telling them our testimony, and telling them the Word of God, and telling them that Jesus is ready to save. He's ready to save. But what happened? The disciples went, preached the gospel. I have to now go in time, jump many things, and the gospel was spread all over the place. And of course, the disciples, the Christians, they got some enemies for themselves. And they were persecuted, they were put in jail, they were killed, they were executed, they died. You can read Hebrews chapter 11. They died like animals. They were thrown to the beast, and they were destroyed. They were crushed. And some of them flee to the mountains and to the wilderness, and they preserve the word of God. But some of the unfaithful leaders of the so-called Christian, they make concessions with the word. They give up to Satan. And the true gospel was replaced for many things like this. The gospel was compromised by traditions. The gospel was compromised by penances. The gospel was compromised with indulgences, then images, and then church hierarchy, and finally with human dogmas. I come from there. I know what this people is talking about. So the faith, the pure gospel was compromised. And the church continued, but God in His mercy said, and I give her time to repent. Have you heard that in Revelation? He said, I give her time to repent. Because God is merciful. But He has set a time. Then, will God's truth be trodden forever? No. If God doesn't if He doesn't step in, believe me, how many will be saved? Few. So God has to intervene, and from their same corruption, He see the faithful ones, and He gave them truth that came to us. And in the dark ages, something happened miraculously. Somebody read the Bible, somebody finds the Bible and start working and start preaching pieces by pieces by pieces. The whole system of truth is come alive again, but still with war. Okay, so we see the Waldenses got the Bible for us. They keep the scriptures. They reproduced it, and they didn't have print shops. They were in on hand, and they were canvassing here, there, and people got the gospel again. But what happened? Hus presented to us the obedience. All this is happening after the 1400s. Then we have Luther that shows the grace. Look, everything is coming together again. Satan scattered the truth abroad. But God is putting it together because the times are coming to an end. And then Calvin present the growth. And then Anabaptists introduced again the baptism to re-baptize those people that were baptized in the Catholic Church. And they didn't know why they were baptized. They don't even remember because, well, they were baptized little. And then that's why they were called Anabaptists, because they were rebaptizing people. Then we have Wesley with holiness. Then we have Miller with the second coming. Now we're getting closer to the time that we need to pay attention. Because, believe me, we are not a new church. This message is the same message, if we keep it as it is, pure, clear, without doctorates and without degrees in divinity, because those people are, if we keep it as it is, the Bible and the Bible only, and the spirit of prophecy guiding us and learning these things, then we will go and get the everlasting gospel again to the people. So Miller introduced the second coming, and now we, the end time people, we have the Sabbath and the commandments to teach. And not only to teach, but to live as it is our lifestyle. Remember, the 10 Commandments. Some people think that because they come to church on Saturday, they're doing a good work. Because they return their tithes, they think they are doing a good work. Because they are members of the Reform movement, they think they are doing a good work. Because they are baptized. No. That is completely wrong. We do that because it's part of our character. Because it's our lifestyle. The good works are shown different. We will not talk today about that. But the 10 Commandments is the character of God reflecting His character, and it's His glory that has to be reflected on us so we can have that garment of light again. He wants to establish His image in us. So if you don't steal, if you don't lie, if you don't commit adultery, if you don't do idolatry, don't feel good for it. Don't feel good for it. That has to be your character. That has to be your lifestyle. If you feel good and you feel better than anybody because I don't steal, do you remember who said that to Jesus? Huh? Remember what he said? Oh, I do this, and this. He was proud of it. And now he says, show some love then. Show me some love. Go and sell everything and give it to those that you don't love. And he goes like, he had what? Too much people, too much money. He was a millionaire. So, you see, to keep the commandments is already implanted in your heart. And that will push you to be a good husband, to be a good wife, to be a good brother, to be a good sister, to be a good pastor, to be a good minister, to be a good church member. So, Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments. There is one Bible verse that I want to read to you because it's connected to the first angel message. It says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. In other words, I'm finishing. I'm just starting to finish. It says, fear God, and keep His commandments. Where the word fear appears in our sermon today? In Revelation 14, verse 6. I saw an angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel, and saying what? Fear who? Fear God. And Ecclesiastes ends up like this. Fear God and keep His commandment, for this is the whole duty of man. Did he know the everlasting gospel? Of course. He knew it. That's why he said there, for God shall bring every work into judgment. I will stop there. If I want to get my own benefit. But I cannot. My conscience tells me to read the rest with every secret thing. You can hide. But you cannot do it forever. Whether it be good, if you're good, God will reflect it. If you are so humble, nobody knows that you do good things. But God will show it one day. Or whether it be evil. If you hide it because you are proud, because you are arrogant, and you are a hypocrite, and you don't want people to know who you are, God will reveal one day. Do you agree with me? Okay. Counsels on Diet and Food, page 76. Tell us something. We are the Lord's denominated people to proclaim the truth of heavenly origin. The most solemn, sacred work ever given to mortals is the proclamation of the first, second, and third angel's message to our world. So our job, our work, is not to play church. We shall be there every week with pamphlets in our hands. Yeah, hey, brother, I work. I don't think you work 24 hours. How many of you work 24 hours here? Some of you don't even work. Have you considered this? If you didn't read it before, take a picture of it and take it home and make of it a duty, a matter of conscience. And you can say, oh, you are a Bible worker, that's why you say that. This is right, you have the right to say it, but will that save you? No. It is an individual calling that we should be stirring the whole world and saying, God, give us Carrollton, God, give us Atlanta, and then God, give us a Georgia to preach the gospel. And wherever you go from here, you got to take this duty, because it's the first, second, and third angel message that you have today. And he's representing us, he says, he's representing us as a people of God. This is amazing. Then he says the three angels of Revelation 14 represents the people who accept the light of God message and go forth as his agents to sound the warning throughout the length and breadth of the earth. Now, because you are a member of the church, that doesn't guarantee you that you will be saved. Do you agree with me? It will be good to hear an amen, a sound amen. I will ask again. Do you think because you are a church member you will be saved? No. You got it. What will save you? What will save you? Only Jesus saved. But once you got this message in your heart, you cannot keep it for you. You have to go out there and present it. It's saying here, we have to be his agents. I will ask a rhetorical question you don't have to answer. But think about for yourself. If I don't do this, I haven't done my job. But I have to ask you, how many pieces of literature do you give every week? Don't answer me. This is from God to you. And besides reading, if you read the Sabbath school lesson every day, how many times you take the Bible and read it every day? Those are questions, very simple questions. I'm not asking you different things like, do you return your tithe? I'm not interested in your money. Not even God is interested in your money. First, he has to be in your heart. Then the money will come by itself. So, the last part, look what it says. The destiny of souls hangs upon the manner in which they are received. Brethren, we have blood in our hands. Do you agree, brother? We have blood in our hands. And look, these messages were presented to me as an anchor to the people of God. Do you know how much ignorance? And I'm not insulting anybody. To be ignorant is not an insult. Like, for example, the sister that is here, I ignore her name. Does that make me a fool? No. Is that an insult? No. It's just that I don't know it. Do you know how much ignorance is there in our church? I'm not talking about any other church, but our church, about these messages. Because, believe me, only these three angels' message should be a conference of a week. Do you agree with me? This message of the three angels message, it has to be a conference of a week from Sunday to Sunday together. And we will not cover it anyway. And now it says here, it is an anchor to the people of God. Once you understand this message, you're going nowhere. Nowhere. I remember a man who knew the message. He preached it, and he was a good example. Believe me, he was a good example. And I knew the man was a Christian, but he failed. And he fell. And he went to the world. And he told me in his return to the church, because I worked with him. He was my teacher, but then he went to the world. Then he came back. And you know what? He told me, I couldn't go to any other place for worshiping the Lord because my mind and my heart remember all the words that I learned from the Bible, the three angels message. And I couldn't, and that's why I'm back. It's an anchor. Those who understand and receive it then will be kept from being swept away by the many delusions of Satan. Why? Because Satan is constantly seeking to cast his hellish shadow about these messages, so that the remnant people of God shall not clearly discern. And if you don't study, you're making the work of Satan easier. If you don't read it, you're giving Satan a heads up. Yes or no? The guy is already at the door, trying to get in, and you leave it open. What difficulty will be for him? Nothing. So Satan is very, very, very smart. And why they are called angels? Do you know what the word angel means? All right, messenger. It's a messenger. But why this message has to be said? I saw another angel. Do you know why? Because the magnitude, because the purity, because the holiness. God calls it angel. Of course, there are literal angels protecting and guiding us, but He calls the message the angels, and we are represented by that angel. But because we are written there, our names are there in the books, don't think that you belong to those angels. So we got to do something. So it says here, the work of preaching the gospel has not been committed to angels, but has been entrusted to men. Holy angels have been employed in directing this work. They have in charge the great movement of the salvation of man. But the actual proclamation of the gospel is performed by the who? The members of the church. By the servants of Christ. And I will go farther there. Replace that word, that expression, servants of Christ, and put your name in there. So how will I read that? The actual proclamation of the gospel is performed by Enrique and Nataren upon this earth. That's my name. Put your name in there and take it home. And I tell you, when you get home on Sunday, Monday, your feet will be like, I gotta go, I gotta go. Your heart will be burning if you put it with all your heart. And you will get this conscience like, I gotta do something. Like when you are hungry, I cannot go out if I don't eat my breakfast. You will say, I cannot come this night and fall asleep if I haven't given up at least a pamphlet to somebody. That will be a sign that the Holy Spirit is within you and working with you. Now, one more. The three angels of Revelation 14 are represented as flying in the midst of heaven, symbolizing the work of those who proclaim the first, second, and third angel message. All are linked together. No one will hear the voice of an angel. No one. But represent the people of God. That's what it says here in Testimonies for the Church, page 17. Represents the people of God, but is very specific, because then you can get in the bus and you say, oh, we're going there, but I don't want to go, but I'm just taking advantage of the ride. He says here, who are working in harmony with the universe of heaven. It's not just to be in the church. It says here clearly, who are working in harmony with the universe of heaven. And then it says, men and women, enlightened by the Spirit of God and sanctified through the truth, proclaim the three messages in their order. So it's amazing. It's amazing how God has worked for us. Time is almost gone, and I have but a few minutes, so we will try to summarize. The first angel message is telling us to go and preach the everlasting gospel. It tells us that a judgment has been set. Is that right? A judgment that is dealing with the living, is dealing with the dead. Because some people get confused with that. Oh, it's dealing with the dead. No, we are being judged. A ticket, a receipt, is an invoice is being written in our behalf, good or bad. And it's telling us to preach the 10 Commandments. It's telling us to talk about the Sabbath day. It's talking to us about the creation. It's talking to us about all the things that will come to this earth and bring the people back. Bring the people back to the origins of the everlasting gospel. It's not a new message. Definitely, it's not a new message. And was this message accepted when it was given? No, it was not. And sadly, some people even oppose it and created animosity against it. And this message was given for a reason. I want to read this and listen to this. The first angel message of Revelation 14 announced the hour of God, judgment, and calling upon men to fear and worship Him. Why was given? Listen, was designed to separate the professed people of God from the corrupting influences of the world. What was the purpose of this? A separation. That's the term church. The church terminology, church, comes from that too. Ecclesia. It means separation, to separate. It means that we must be different. And it says here that this message was designed to separate us from the influence of the world. Now, was accepted? No. So what happened? The second angel's message. Here is talking about Babylon has fallen. Babylon has fallen. He gave to drink the nations of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. What does this mean? We can spend days talking about this, but we don't have the time today, so we will see what is this. As the nominal churches refused to receive the first angel message, they rejected the light from heaven and fell from the favor of God. They trusted their own strength, and by opposing the first message, placed themselves where they could not see the light of the second angel message. But they, the beloved of God, who were oppressed, accepted the message, Babylon is falling, and left the churches. It's not talking about the Catholic Church here. It's talking about the Protestant churches that rejected the first angel message. And you can see, we will not read it, but Revelation 17, 4-6 talks about a woman riding a beast of 7 heads with horns and all this. What is this about? This is the new form of Catholicism in prophecy, in time. Here, you know, in 1798, the Catholic Church was stopped. And what happened? Then we see that they were stopped, but they were not destroyed. and they continue their work through systems. And they create more confusion now because they work separately. This beast is a system that has control over the world and is controlled by a church. Believe it or not. But that's how it works. The term Babylon is derived from Babel and signifies confusion, and is employed in the scripture to designate the various forms of false or apostate religion. And it says clearly the power that for so many centuries maintained despotic sway over the monarchs of the Christendom is Rome. Now, Babylon has a system, okay? How they control the world today. We will not go in details, but look, Babylon has a system of religious system. Okay, you can see all over the place. Spiritualism, ecumenism, all the churches don't attack anybody. We are happy. That's part of Babylon. Confusing. What do you like from my religion? Oh, I like this, I like that. So we can work on that. Let's be together. That's Babylon, working there. Uniting with somebody that doesn't believe our creeds, our doctrines, and working with them, that is dangerous. Evil spirits will come and take over. Another system, the politics. What kind of politics? Communism, socialism, anarchy, new world order. You see all around you. Read the news. Some people say, I don't read the news. No, you have to read because it can be happening even in your church. Racist problem about race, about gender thing, all this business with LGBTQ, RXZ, and numbers, whatever you put there. This is part of Babylon, creating confusion. Look at the classroom in the schools. And we are in trouble. Babylon is getting there because now the pastors are afraid in these Protestant churches to speak against these things. I hope that there will not be the time in our church that I will say, I cannot speak about that because people will get angry. Then I got to go running and find someplace else. We cannot accommodate these things. That's Babylon. If you don't stand, you are with them. If you don't stand against them, you are with them. If you keep silent, you are approving them. So this message has to be given with a warning. Then we have the next one, economic system, capitalism, unions. You see how they control everything now. Credit card, debit card. You know, where I live, I will not tell you what happened there, not even a bank. Every Friday, every weekend you go to the ATM. You know what? You want to get money? You know what they say? Sorry, no cash today. You want to take money from the machine? He says, sorry. No cash. It's a practice now. They block you. So they are preparing the brain of the people how they will control even your finances or even whatever you work for it. It's pure communism, socialism. I have a brother here that is from China. He came from there. If you want to talk about the system that is implemented in this country now, talk to him. Ask him. Brother Pinta came from there too. Am I right, brother? From Romania. Communism. That's what we're getting here. And that is against God. Yugoslavia. Am I right, brother? David? Now is Croatia. Is that right? And Montenegro and all these things. Sad. You have people here that you can talk about the former Soviet Union and thing, and you will know, you will not even dare to agree with these crazy people. They are demon possessed. I remember my mother was a Catholic, but he was very fair woman, and she told me like this. I was the last of 10, and when I was getting educated, I was going to a college that called Primero de Mayo, which is communist college, and I was going there, and she said, you never become communist, because you will forget about God, you will fight against God. And I said, then I'm not going there. This is the design for this thing. You know, in the Red Plaza, I don't know how you call it, they have Lenin there. Am I right, brother? In Russia, in Moscow? Vladimir Lenin is standing there, but he's dead. And that's their savior. They go and worship this guy. Instead of worshiping one that died and resurrected, they are worshiping a dead man. Because the ideology, they have been brainwashed. Now look at the next one, health system, alternative medicine. Now yoga thing and all these things are getting into the vegetarianism. Oh, vegan here, vegan there. Oh man, this is destroying the true message of the three angels. We got to be careful what we teach and how we approach it. And finally, the educational system, we are in diapers. We need to move on in this part because Babylon, the educational system, has useless reading, long, tedious, misleading based on humanism. And now, have you read the new books that the kids have? Will these drag queens go to the schools and start teaching in California? I don't know. We have some visitors from California here. They have serious problems there. Am I right, brother? They have serious problems. This is all Babylon. This is all the Catholic Church. This is all the control that they want to have upon us. And thank God that we know the Reform movement. And finally, they want to break the Sabbath. They want to make us break the Sabbath. They want to make us Sabbath breakers. In conclusion, I can go on and on and on and on. Everlasting gospel, remember. But I know I have to respect the time. So in view of all this solemn truth, what should be our attitude today? What should be? Read. Read with me in your hearts. But I will read it. As the disciples waited for the fulfillment of the promise, they humbled their hearts in true repentance and confessed their unbelief. Brethren, next year will be a horrible year for us. I'm not a prophet. But if it happened, I said it. I said it in 2019. Some of you remember. I said it. Next year will be a horrible year, 2020. What happened? Huh? Mr. COVID. Everybody submitted to him. Even our churches were closed. He ruled over us. Fear controlled the people like in Egypt. So now we have to wake up. The disciples prayed with intense earnestness for a fitness to meet men and in their daily intercourse to speak words that will lead sinners to Christ. That's our job. Forget about the results. Leave the consequence to God. Preach the truth. Don't accommodate anything. Tell them what is wrong. Tell them that they will die, the eternal death, that they will be separated from God. Tell them that this is life or death message. Don't sugarcoat that thing. Preach it. Say it. As I have said about Jesus in this message. Do you see? How many of you like the part of Jesus? How many of you like this part now? Huh? Or you will forget this part and will take that one, or you will take that one, and what are you going to do? This is the three angels' message. This is the real reform message. This is the message of the reform movement. That whatever comes has its place and its time and where to be presented. But this is what we have to say. And finally, your duty. They were weighted with the burdens of salvation of souls. That's our problem. They realized that the gospel was to be carried to the world, and they claimed the power that Christ had promised. So the Lord has given us a task. Are we going to fulfill it? How many of you will do more missionary work now? Let me see your hands. It's like a calling right now. It's like I will say, how many of you will give your life to Jesus? We have asked that so many times. Now I will ask a different question. How many of you will go and preach the gospel? How many of you will say, Jesus, I am yours, use me. I want to preach the gospel. Amen?